Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday with this threatening weather. Almost a full room, so it's really, really nice to see. And hello to the people online. I don't know where they are, but probably my dad and my mom are watching. I hope so. Yeah, say hi to my mom and dad. Today, we'll talk about systems thinking in the context of climate breakdown and the necessary ecological, not transition, but transformation, radical transformation that we need. And I'm just so happy that you guys showed up for this topic. Most of you, I forced you to come, so I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure you won't regret it. And I have my lovely colleagues here who chose to come. So thanks again. And thanks to SPY for welcoming us and to the Green Office for helping me promote this event. I just want to see who's not from the UvA. So if you're not from the UvA, can you stand up? Great. A very warm welcome to you especially, because you really chose to be here, and that's super nice to see. So the rest know me, but you guys don't. So I'm Max. I'm a junior lecturer at the UvA and at AUC, Amsterdam University College. And I'm not going to say any more about me because you came for Arthur. And some of you already know this, but initially this talk was supposed to be part of a course that I'm teaching at the UvA called New Perspectives, Rethinking Sustainable Societies. But he couldn't make it at the lecture slot on Wednesday evening. But luckily, fate decided that he was in Amsterdam the day before, so that's today. And he is here with us. He could be chilling in Amsterdam along the canals, eating fries, which he did, or a stroopwafel, which he did not yet, I assume. He could do all the touristy stuff in Amsterdam, but he literally told me, Max, this is my priority, and it's my citizen's duty to do this. In French, it sounds better. It's devoir citoyen. I'm not sure how to translate it in English, but it's his duty to be here. So I think that says a lot about who he is as a person. So I'll welcome you as well, Arthur. And I'll formally introduce you, and here I have to read my notes. So he is an expert, or a specialist, if you don't like the word expert, in systemic risks and strategies toward collective resilience. And he teaches systems thinking at the Centrale Supélec Engineering School. He was trained as an engineer, but he is not an engineer. He trains elected representatives, local authorities and public agencies in community security and national resilience, which is one of the topics of today as well. And he is also one of the leading French thinkers of low-tech, not high-tech, low-tech innovation. And more generally, he tries to empower people and organizations to reinvent themselves meaningfully to face the current and forthcoming societal disruptions that we will face. He's someone that I've been following for quite a while on LinkedIn. He's quite a LinkedIn influencer, even though he won't admit it. I've been watching his conferences in French, and I thought it would be a great idea to expand his audience and get him to speak in English. It's his first time speaking in the Netherlands, so give him a warm welcome, please. You know, we'll have a Q&A after his talk, so if you have any questions, write them down. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much, Max, for this introduction. I'm not used as, I'm not as used as speaking in English as I am as speaking French. So it's not going to be as fluent as I would like it to be, but I'll do my best. My English is okay, just a little rusted. So I have 1 hour and 45 minutes, is that right? To tell you things that a whole week wouldn't be enough. a whole month wouldn't be enough, really. So I'll try to stick to the essentials. And 1 hour and 45 minutes may look right now long. I hope you won't feel this way afterwards. I hope you will think, it's too bad he couldn't speak for 4 hours. We'll see. Anyway, we're talking about our future. We're talking about the challenges ahead. And I have many, many messages to convey. Maybe the most important one is that I strongly believe, and I'm going to try to demonstrate or convince you, I'm strongly believe that we have not, and when I say we, I mean societies, us, the people, and our elected officials, and these decision makers of all sorts, we have not understood yet the very nature of the crisis we're in, or the situation we're in. We understand that there are issues, there are challenges, we understand all that, it's serious, okay. But we think that we have tools to solve those issues. We have solutions to the problems, and I think we're wrong. Just even saying that is not the right way to see it. Basically, we believe that human societies are facing an ecological crisis. Well, it's not true. It's nature that's facing a human crisis. It's really something else. We should not try to solve the crisis. We should try to change ourselves, try how we live, thinking that we are and must be the solution without changing ourselves is wrong. It's not going to work because we are mainly the problem. So how do we tackle this? How do we recharacterize the stakes and the challenges? And then that's on the diagnosis side. And then on the strategic side, I think we are wrong too. I think the methodology that we have is wrong. It's not going to work because it lacks systemics thinking completely. And systemics or systems analysis is not just something, more. It's just something that makes you understand a little better, go a little further into understanding the challenges. No, it's something else. It changes completely the way you understand the issues and the way you think about what to do about it. So there are two parts in my lecture. The first part is about trying to understand, reconceptualize what's at stake. And the second part is, what do we do about it? Let me tell you right away, the first part is harsh. It's going to be a difficult moment, an unpleasant moment for all of you. Even most of those who know a lot about these topics already. What I can tell you is that every time I give speeches, keynotes, lectures, whatever the form, whatever, every time I speak to people working in transition, be it energy transition, ecological transition, or CSR, or sustainable development, people who think that they're making the world more sustainable and they've devoted their professional, maybe their whole life to it. When I speak to these people, they don't like it. They don't disagree most of the times afterwards, but it's a really harsh moment for them, even more than for the rest of the people, because they realize that somehow they're still part of the problem. So I don't know exactly who I will convince today and who I will not. We'll see. What I must tell you before I go further, go ahead, is that, so there are two parts, and the first part is harsh. And if you know right now that for some reason you won't be able to stay until the end, please leave now. Really, it's not a joke. Please leave now. Because only watching the first part of my speech is destructive. It's going to be destructive for you psychologically, and it's not going to be of any help to the world. So if you're staying right now, you're in till the end, okay? We agree with that? Right. I'm here to wake people up conceptually and then physically, like personally in their life and collectively. So I hope it'll work with some of you at least. Let's try to understand or re-understand what's at stake. We're facing a systemic predicament, and it has implications on all the different dimensions of what we call the Earth system. I'm sure that here some of you know what the Earth system is, but anyway, I'm going to go through it quickly, very quickly. What is the Earth system? So first, it's the lithosphere. The lithosphere, it has different dimensions, right? It has 6 main dimensions, so I'm going to go through them. First dimension, the lithosphere, it's the external part of the mantle crust. And we take, when I say we, it's human societies, we extract resources from the lithosphere to feed and our societies, our modern societies. The first of those resources is oil. Our societies exist the way they exist only, not only, but mainly because we have a gigantic amounts of cheap oil. It's oil, it's cheap oil, it's a lot of cheap oil, and it's a lot of cheap oil all the time. But not too cheap. If it's too cheap, then the oil industry is not profitable anymore. And after a few years, it ends up collapsing, just like it happened in Venezuela. So it's an equilibrium. It's not just, are there resources in the ground? It's, are we able to get them? How? How much does it cost? What is the price of the commodity on the market? And who decides what? If you don't produce it yourself, are you going to be able to ensure the input that you need to function? At which price? So it's a lot of questions, technical questions, geological questions, of financial and economic questions, and political and strategic questions. If you're not a producer of one resource, well then you are dependent on the people who produce it and who treat those resources, and you have to buy it from them. So you are dependent on logistics, okay, to bring that resource to you. Now, all the logistics, they're dependent on cheap oil. The way logistics exist today, the way the goods and the freight moves around the earth, doesn't only work because we have a lot of cheap oil. Our societies, if we possess what we possess, if we wear what we wear today, if we have the lives that we live, if we can move around, if the cities are the way they are, if the roads, if the infrastructure are the way they are, all of that only because there's a gigantic amount of cheap oil. Now, the problem is, you see, that this period of time, this era when we have cheap, abundant oil and gas and other stuff, is about to end. It will end not just like this in a day. It will be more progressive, but we're starting to enter the period where we're going out of this zone, and we'll probably be completely out of this zone within, I would say, 10 to 15 years, perhaps 20. Who knows? Depends on a lot of things, but it's not going to last. And to some extent, it's a good news, because it has to stop from the climate point of view. But if it stops without us preparing for it, without us adapting our lifestyles to not using petrol, in these societies, in these infrastructures and cities and roads which have been built for and because of petrol, it's not going to work. We're going to have big problems. We're going to have societal disruptions, and we're not going to be able to actually do and organize the big transition we need. So to be able to organize the transition, we need to secure the main functions of our society. And those main functions today depend on cheap oil, so we have to change that. The big discoveries of oil, they date back to a few decades, about half a century ago. Today, the oil replacement ratio has gone down to 16%. I stopped in 2019 because 2020, 2021 were exceptions, and I'm still waiting for the 2022 data. Anyway, see, we're back to around 16% replacement ratio. What does it mean? It means that for each barrel that we find, we consume 6. That's what it means. And Saudi Arabia, for example, has, a year ago, Saudi Arabia, the prime minister, not the prime minister, the minister of energy, said that, well, that's it. We're kind of hitting the ceiling. We won't be able to produce more, and we'll probably, our production will start decreasing around 2027. That's what they said. So it's the first time. Until then, Saudi Arabia was claiming that, yeah, we have loads. If the world needs more, we can just tune it up, and it's, you know, we'll have whatever we need. Actually, no. The thing is, we don't exactly know how much oil there is, but the only thing I can tell you, I can base my reasoning upon, is what the experts say. Mainly some experts in France that we have, who are really good in the Shift project, and some other experts in Reichstadt Energy, and yeah, I think they produced that. And anyway, these are the main sources. According to these people, well, we're going to go out of this period of time with cheap abundant oil between 2030 and 2035, probably. Oil, you see, supplies only a third of the world's primary energy, but without it, we don't know how to produce the rest, extract, transport, everything, the rest. So the end of cheap, abundant oil, or abundant, cheap oil, will also be the end of abundant, cheap, everything else, pretty much. The implications are huge. Apart from oil and gas, which I'm not going to talk about right now, I'm going just really very fast. The second thing that we take from the lithosphere is ores. We need a lot of ores. Ores for our gadgets, ores for our infrastructure, oils for the big energy transition that is the project that is supposed to save us from catastrophic climate change. So this is the solution. See? Probably looks like a solution. What I mean is, okay, why not? Why not do this? Renewables. I have nothing against renewables. In certain cases, depends. But the problem is that this requires a lot of ores, a lot of sand and gravel, and a lot of metals. And one of the metals that we need most when you resort to other types of means of energy production, like windmills, not windmills, wind turbines. Wind turbines, and is that there are many wind turbines. What I mean is that if you replace one plant, be it a coal plant or a nuclear plant, if you replace one by, I don't know, the calculations, it depends, but let's say 1,000 turbines, wind turbines, you need much more metal to do this and to connect all the lines, and you also have the motors and stuff. It's a lot of copper. We need a lot of copper. We need a lot of many things, cobalt and lithium and stuff, but copper, mainly copper. And the problem you see is that we won't have enough copper. Probably won't. I don't see the future. I don't read into the future, but I can say at least that many people, many experts believe that we're in for a tough ride when it comes to copper. Where is copper? Well, copper, it's in French, I'm sorry, but copper is mainly in South America. Here it's other countries. Here it's Chile, Peru, Mexico. Well, Mexico is North America, but anyway, here it's said 23%. But depending on the publications, the amount of the resources that are in Chile, the copper resources, they vary between 22 and 38% of the total, the world's total. Peru, they vary between 10 and 16 or 18%. I think it was 18. And Mexico, they vary between 6 and 12. So there's about between 40% and more than half of the world resources when it comes to copper, which are in South America. And it takes a lot of water to get copper. Well, copper, there's a lot of it, but it takes a lot of water. And see, the mines are already coming against, hitting a limit when it comes to the availability of water in Chile. Drought in Chile curbs copper production, trim global surplus. Consequences will be dire. Chile's water crisis is reaching breaking point. Copper faces long-term shortage as demand outruns supply. We're in 2023, and probably the most important resource that the whole world needs to do its energy transition, to save us from catastrophic climate change, that resource, well, we're not going to have enough. We're not going to have enough for everything. We will do things, we will do projects, and we will move towards a better energy mix, okay, but the world won't have enough copper to go till the end. And the problem also with that is that we do not have the right institutions to organize this energy transition on a global level. We have people talking, we have the COPs every year, and in the COPs people talk and countries talk, and then everyone goes back home and they do what they can and what they want. And the resources we need are going to go up, the prices are going to go up, and not everyone is going to be able to afford that. So the rich countries will be able to afford their precious resources and do their energy transition, while other countries, poorer countries, may not have enough money to afford those resources and do their own energy transition. And it has nothing to do, it just has to do with money, right, and power. It has nothing to do with where the transition is most needed. I believe that in countries like my country, France, probably your country here, and other countries, for example, Norway and Sweden, I believe that for the sake of Swedes and Norwegians and Dutch people and French people, we should invest our money in the energy transition of India, not in ours. We're not going to do that, are we? Same for lithium. About a year ago, about a little more than a year ago, in France, there was the World Materials Forum. And the experts from the whole world in materials and commodities, they gathered and they launched a red alert on the shortage of materials for the energy transition. Have you seen that? Have you heard about that in the news? Of course not. That should have made the news. That is very important. Sand. Probably some of you know that we are already lacking some sand. We don't have enough sand for construction. Not all sand can be used for construction. It's mainly marine sand. And did you know that in 2 years, China has used more cement, therefore more sand in 2 years, than the United States during the whole 20th century? The flows of energy and materials are crazy. They're absolutely amazing. And, in your everyday life, you can't know about this if you don't know the numbers. And there's many things like this. There's an incredible acceleration of the rate at which we extract resources from the planet, and then from the lithosphere, among other things, biosphere as well. I'm going to talk about it then in a few minutes. And then, of course, there's an acceleration of the output, meaning the waste and pollution that we put into the environment. I'll get back to that. The Burj Khalifa, which is the highest building in the world in Dubai, has been built entirely with sand imported from Australia. And we have mafias today, sand mafias, who steal whole beaches, whole coasts, and sell that sand on the black market. And there are people getting killed every year for sand today. And we seem not to care about that. Is that, all I'm telling you about, is that an energy problem or a problem of raw materials? Well, it's both, because ores are less and less concentrated, therefore we need more and more energy to extract them, but energy is less and less accessible, therefore we need more and more materials to produce it. And one multiplied by the other is called a positive retroaction. Basically, it's an acceleration of the system. The system moves towards limits, and it moves toward them faster and faster. I couldn't also tell you about phosphorus. Phosphorus is what we need to live. No phosphorus, no life. It's part of anything that has DNA. It's the energy of our cells. Phosphorus is life, and the normal cycle of phosphorus is this. You have animals and plants on the ground. They grow thanks. The plants grow thanks to phosphorus. Then they die or disintegrate, go back to the soil, and that's it. The cycle repeats itself. That's the theory. Now, in reality, it doesn't work like this anymore. Not in France, and not in the Netherlands, with the highly intensive agricultural system that we have. In this agricultural system, the soil is, I wouldn't say dead, but the life of the soil is really, really, really in bad shape. And the soil has no possibility to ensure its own phosphorus cycle. So the soil cannot grow anything by itself. That's why we bring, artificially, fertilizers with phosphorus, among other things. Where does this phosphorus come from? From somewhere else. You don't have phosphorus on your territory. We don't in France either. It comes from different parts of the world, China, South Africa, and also Morocco. And we're going to have problems because the peak phosphorus, according to experts, is about 20 years. It's in 20 years' time. So we need to make sure that the cycle of phosphorus is circularized. Can you see what I mean? Rebouclé? Can you help me? Looped back. Anyway, so for all these questions, it's a matter of stocks, but it's mostly a matter of flow. Are we able to give and to supply our societies with what they need to function and to organize the big transitions that we need? The second part of the Earth system is the hydrosphere, water in all its forms. So the hydrosphere, let's take a look. How's it going? Not really good. There's chemical pollution. There's physical, here plastic mainly, pollution. So that's in the Philippines. It concerns humans, but also animals on Earth, on the sea, everywhere. The hydrosphere is also acidifying. It's getting more acid. And we can see it in the coral reefs. The coral reefs are dying. And according to experts, if we don't curb back global climate change, then at least 99% of our corals will have died by 2050. By 2050. The problem is, you see that about 25% of all marine life depend on the coral reefs, so that's going to be terrible. The hydrosphere is warming. The hydrosphere is rising. Now the level of the speed of rise is about almost 5 millimeters a year on global average. The hydrosphere is we have phenomena of salinization. So aquifers get salinized, and people who depend on this aquifer to produce the food, like this man who lives in Bangladesh, who lived in Bangladesh, who knows? Because for this poor man, it was game over as soon as he couldn't have access to proper, clean and how do you say that, water, fresh water. You have phenomena like this, drought. We knew it would happen. But it was supposed to happen 20 years later. So that's the Loire, one of the main rivers in France, and that's about a year ago. And also we have phenomena of deoxygenation, less oxygen, with whole ecosystems suffocating and dying in the ocean. And now we're putting pressure on the seas and on the marine ecosystems even more for many things, fishing, of course, aquaculture, and deep sea minerals and hydrocarbons that we're going to exploit probably, and the wind farms, and the tourism, and the cables, and the noise, the shipping, etc. So the pressure on these vital ecosystems, vital for us, for everything, for all life on Earth, the pressure is tremendous. Next part of the Earth system is the cryosphere. That's actually a subpart of the hydrosphere because it's water, but it's water in the form of ice. So all forms of ice, really, being glaciers or sea ice, icebergs, and ice shelves, permafrost in the upper latitudes. It's melting. According to this 2019 IPCC report on the cryosphere, it's melting much faster than we are able to model today, to simulate. What we know is that the Arctic is warming about 4 times faster on average than the rest of the world. The fourth part of the Earth system is the atmosphere. If you look at what the glaciologists tell us. Sorry about that. If you look what they tell us, they reconstitute the concentration of CO2 for a little more than 800,000 years, and this is what you see. You see ups and downs, and it correlates very well with ice ages here and interglacial periods here. It's a cycle, some sort, but today we're here. We're just out of all natural cycles. You probably know about it if you want to talk about it. If you're not entirely convinced yet, this is proven that it's entirely due to human activities. It's not a theory, there are proofs. And yeah, we're out of all types of cycle today. If we zoom on the last 2,000 years, this is what it looks like in the world. And if you look at the temperature, this is what it looks like. Yeah, here's Jesus, and you're here. So, is decarbonation or decarbonization underway? Because this is presented to us as the big challenge, right? The big objective. We need to decarbonize. No, some countries have made your country part of those have made great efforts, but still, no, the world is not decarbonizing at all. Not at all. In 2022, still 85% of all energy in the world is still produced with fossil fuels. And it's not going to change. It's not going to change unless we make it change. The societies, they work in a very specific way. We cannot have, listen to my word, you cannot have the same society with a different energy input. Even if we have as much energy, but in a different form, we can't use it exactly for the same things. Fossil fuels, we didn't use them just because it was easy. We used them because it was incredible. It was easy, it was safe, and it was dense, energetically dense. And you cannot do the same with electricity. You can do some things, not everything. And fossil fuels, it's also petrochemistry. And most of what you wear today in this room, there's some petrol in it, there's some oil in it. At least there's even oil just to, for you to buy it, for it to come to you and you to go and buy it. Anyway, our societies without fossil fuels are not the same societies. So trying to maintain our societies with just a few adjustments, but changing the way we produce energy is a nonsensical project. It's not going to work. You change the energy input, you change the energy system, which, by the way, changing an energy system takes at least 50 years. You do that, you change your society. More or less, but you change it. So it's not going to change. Not easily, and not fast. So that's one of the reasons why this. But still, it's not enough. Most of us, we don't understand. But why on earth doesn't it work? We're making progress. There's innovation. There's a lot of money which is put into it. There's effort. People, they change, they evolve. Why doesn't it translate into a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions? Okay, the politicians, they don't do enough, blah, blah, blah. But still, there are efforts. Why can't we see them? Look at that. Why can't we see those efforts? Well, I'm going to ask you a question. have we changed the way our societies work in the past 20 or 30 years? Have we changed the goals? Have we changed the values? Have we changed the indicators, the KPIs, the metrics that we use? Have we changed all that? No? The culture? Well, then you have your answer. Because it's not by just solutions, technical solutions, legal, normative solutions that we're going to change this. No, we need to change more profound things for it to have a chance to work. In France, sorry, that's in French, and that is about France. In France, the carbon footprint of a French person is about 10 tons CO2 equivalent per year. And we need to go just to comply with the Paris Agreement, which is not enough. But just to comply with this agreement, we need to go in the next 27 years from 10 to 2. Well, do you think that's possible with, I don't know, not traveling by plane as often, eating a little less meat, car sharing? Think that's going to be enough? No, it's not going to be enough. If we do everything we can, all of us, we will have done maybe a fourth, like a quarter of the way. So you can hear, it's easy to find what you can do to lower your carbon footprint. Or you can change the way you consume. You can change many of the things that you do and how you do them. Okay, do that. Please do. But what they don't tell you is what we can do together as citizens. And with that, there's no way out. We need to come together. Just one thing about the COPs. Every year we have these huge UN gatherings, and you know that the COPs, they are organized according to principles, and those principles, they're written in the UNFCCC, that's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And in this convention, you can read Article 3.5, that we need to have sustainable economic growth and sustainable development, and you cannot do anything that is wrong for international trade. So in this article is written the following principle. We need to solve a problem without hindering, without embarrassing the system that creates the problem. It's not going to work, and it's not working. This is how the CO2 concentration has evolved in the past few decades, and this is when the COP started. It really, it made a difference. I'm not saying nothing good came out of that. If we didn't have the COPs, we'd probably be somewhere around here. So I'll take it. Okay. I'll take it as one tool, part of a whole toolbox, not as the solution. The only thing we may reach, the only thing we may the only advancement, the only progress we may make thanks to this kind of tools is we will make sure that the problem still gets worse, but less fast. That's it. That's the only thing that we can expect from that. It will keep getting worse and worse and worse. Even worse than that, it will keep getting worse faster and faster. But a little less faster and faster than if we hadn't that. It's the acceleration rate that we have a lever on. That's the only part of the solution we're actually acting upon. Then there's the biosphere. The biosphere is all forms of life. There are thousands and thousands of studies and papers on this. There are two that I like. They're really thorough, really good. This one, they have reconstituted from 1970 to 2018 the dynamics of about 22,000 populations of vertebrates all over the world. They see decline rates of those populations everywhere. There are a few very small counterexamples here and there. But overall, everywhere, decline rates. Now, if you calculate the mean, the average of all those decline rates, you reach 69%. 69% in 48 years. So I'm part of those people who walk on stages and who tell people the following sentence, a sentence that no biologist will disagree with. However, they may disagree about the fact that it's a good idea to tell people that. Some people, they don't want to tell people, or they try to do it in a specific way because they think that you should not scare people too much. And we'll see in a few minutes why they are wrong, deadly wrong. But anyway, what I'm about to tell you is the simple, honest truth. Life on Earth is collapsing. That's it, here we are. Life on Earth is collapsing right now. And we watch Netflix. What are we doing? What the hell are we doing? If you look at the populations of mammals on Earth now, and you estimate the biomass of those mammals, today we think that about 62% of the biomass is livestock and pets, 34% is humans, and there's 4% left of wildlife. The sixth and last dimension of the Earth system is the pedosphere. Pedosphere is the soils, and the experts tell us that 75% of all soils on Earth are disrupted, are degraded by human activities. 33%, pretty much a third, very much degraded. So far, I haven't given you my opinion on these topics, because we don't care. We don't care about my opinion, and I don't care about yours. There are people working on these topics, and I've just picked, not the studies that I liked the most, but the main studies that no one today really refutes the conclusions of. So with these conclusions, because there's much worse out there, there are much worse papers, but it's enough. It's enough to give you an idea, an honest idea of the state of the planet, of the Earth system, the observed state of the planet. Then next to the Earth system, there's the anthroposphere. The anthroposphere is the sphere of humans. It's us, the constructions, the old ones, the new ones. It's the products and objects. It's the waste and pollution and ourselves. This is the anthroposphere. And the anthroposphere is going boom. It's going boom for a few decades now, for about 50 years. So many of you may have heard of this very important study. 1915, the Great Acceleration. They looked at a certain number of indicators relating first, on the left-hand side, to human activities. And they saw that in the past decades, those indicators have gone up quickly. You have, for example, fertilizer consumption, energy use, water use, paper production, tourism, telecommunications, transportation, etc., etc. And then on the right-hand side, you have the implications, the impacts on the Earth system, with indicators going boom as well. At the same time, you have concentrations of greenhouse gases here. You have surface temperature, ocean acidification, the accumulation of nitrogen in coastal areas. You have the loss of tropical forest, blah, blah, blah. So the anthroposphere goes boom, and the impacts on the Earth system goes boom. Then you have this study. Once again, it's a very well-known study. Some of you may have heard of it, and some of you may have heard also that it was updated last week. Last week there was this big update. So I'll go fast. I'm not going to spend half an hour on it. We could spend even more than that on it, but no, just to tell you that indeed the people who did that in 2009. And then there were several updates. The people who worked on that, they asked a question. The question was, are there limits, boundaries? Are there boundaries not to be crossed if we are to make sure that the planet remains habitable? That's the whole question. How do we maintain the habitability of planet Earth? It's the challenge ahead. We have many problems. You have your problems. I have my problems. People Many people have much serious problems here and elsewhere. You know, the world is filled with problems. There's wars and there's hungers and famine. Say famine? Yeah. There's famine, and there's human rights issues, etc., etc. But all that, and our capacity to deal with all that, if the planet becomes uninhabitable, it's over. So this problem is the meta issue. It's the big problem. It's the elephant in the room. No one talks about it really, not in this way. What we do is that we focus on different issues. And even this study has problems because it presents the things as different issues, like different silos, basically. Even this is not systems thinking. It's just multi-dimensional thinking. It's good. It's very interesting. But it's not enough, as we'll see just after that. Anyway, what they came up with as an answer is, yes, there are boundaries not to be crossed. They identified 9 of them, and now we know that among those 9 boundaries, we've already crossed 6. We've crossed the boundary when it comes to climate change. We're out of the safe operating space for humanity, out of the equilibrium state or zone. Here, it's as I was saying, the collapse of the biosphere and biodiversity. Here's land system change, how we use and degrade soil. Here is the cycle of water in different forms. We have biogeochemical flows, sorry. That's the big cycles of life. They've chosen to focus mainly on nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen. And we have here novel entities, meaning pollution and waste. The last 3 boundaries, ocean acidification, we're close to it. We're getting very close to it. Aerosol loading in the atmosphere, that we haven't crossed it yet on a global scale. On a regional scale, in some places, mainly Asia, we have, but not on a global scale, not yet at least. And this is the only part which is getting slightly better about stratospheric ozone. Anyway, we've already crossed 6 of the 9 boundaries which should not be crossed ever. Okay? And what do we do about it? Well, we try to solve problems, and as we're going to see now, it's the wrong way to proceed. Anyway, just to finish this part of my presentation, we are here right now. We are in a state of global, planetary, ecological overshoot. The red curve, ecological footprint, is above biocapacity, the green curve. And to be simplistic, let's say that the red curve corresponds to the pressure that we exert on the system and planetary system, and the green curve is the capacity of the Earth system to tank it, to outlive the pressure. So today, what we the amount of pressure the whole, it's not we. When I say we, it's, let's say, human activities, right? The sum of all human activities exert on the planet is way beyond the biocapacity, the capacity of the system to sustain it. So do we now understand what's going on? Once I've said all this, do we understand the stakes? Do we understand the gravity of the situation? Do we understand what we are facing? Yes or no? Okay, who thinks yes? Don't be shy. Who thinks no? Yeah. Okay, right. I suspect some of you said yes and then said no. I don't know. No, sorry for those who said yes. No. No, we haven't understood the situation. After this introduction, very useful introduction, I believe, no, we haven't started to grasp the very nature of the problem. And that's the problem. The problem is that we haven't understood the next step of the demonstration, the one that comes right now. No one has. No decision maker has. And you'll see it's very important. So, is climate change a problem that we need to solve? Or is it just a symptom of a bigger problem? That's the first question. There's a second one. It's a symptom of the problem, which is the fact that human societies, we could say human civilization, is a mega machine that turns nature into waste. We extract it, transform it using energy into goods and services and infrastructure and so on, and then we turn it into waste at the end. A few of the flows in this system, in this material, in this transformation, can be recycled, can be circularized, but very little, maybe 1%. Overall, it's a big linear problem. We take, we transform, and we pollute. When I say that the red curve is above the green curve, it means that on this side, we take resources faster than they can regenerate. Some resources are non-renewable, so we empty stocks. Some resources are renewable, but if you extract them, if you exploit them faster than the renewable rate, well, then the stock goes down. Then, in the middle, with all this, we live, societies, and we transform nature, and we transform it faster than it can adapt. And we destroy nature directly and indirectly. And we do it faster than it can repair itself. And at the end, we reject waste and pollution, and then we do it faster than it can absorb those waste and reintegrate them into cycles, natural cycles. Not all pollutions can be reintegrated into cycles, by the way. So that's the problem, and that's why the red curve is above the green curve. Now, the waste I'm talking about, solids, liquids, and gases. And among the gases, you have greenhouse gases that fuck up the climate. The climate change is just one of the symptoms of this problem. Do we agree with this? Now, why is it important to make this difference between the problem, a problem to be solved, and just a symptom? For this, I use a metaphor. It will look simple, but it took me a while to come up with this metaphor through systems analysis. This metaphor is simplistic. It's also unpleasant. I'm sorry, but I've been unpleasant so far, so it doesn't matter. I like it because I think it's efficient and it's kind of true. So imagine that you have headaches. Imagine that you have skin issues and that you have chronic belly or digestive problems. If those are different problems, well, I have good news. We have solutions. Paracetamol. Now, for your skin, you go see a dermatologist, and the expert is going to give you the right cream. And for your belly, you're going to go see a gastroenterologist, a belly doctor, okay, whatever you call that here. And he's going to tell you, oh, this herbal tea is perfect for you. 3 problems, 3 solutions. Bye-bye. You can go and live your life without changing much. But if those are only symptoms of the fact that you have a systemic disorder, systemic problem in your body, a generalized cancer, are you going to heal your cancer by taking pills, paracetamol, putting some cream, and drinking herbal tea? No. Because there's a fundamental difference between treating a systemic disease and treating the different symptoms. Today, when we tackle climate change, it's very important, and I'm not saying we should not do it. Of course we should do it, because that symptom will kill us. So we need to decarbonize, and we need to consume and emit less, blah, blah, blah. We need to do all that. But if we just do that, cancer is still here, and we're still going to die. It's just a symptom. The way we deal with symptoms, without systems thinking, without a global, coherent way of seeing those things, means that to solve one problem, we make the others even worse. Now, if you invest into and you deploy renewables, are you part of the solution? For the climate, yeah, maybe. So it's good, right? It's good. But on the other hand, it implies an intensification of extractive flows. So you have more pressure on the environment, more pressure on biodiversity, more pressure on water resources, more pollution, more health issues for local populations, and I'm not even talking about human rights. Are you still part of the solution? You're part of a trade-off. And I can hear it. I can hear someone who tells me, I've decided that to me it's more important to tackle climate change, so I'm aware of all the drawbacks, I'm aware of all the problems that it will create, but I think it's more important to develop renewables. Why not? Why not? But someone who tells me, yeah, I'm the good guy because I develop renewables, so I'm part of the solution. No, man, you just haven't understood the problem. See, we're taking things the wrong way. So there are people working on all these things, getting resources from the ground, access to water, for instance, and clean water and hygiene, and the problems with the melting glaciers in the Himalayas, and the, I don't know, clean air, particles and all stuff, and the problems with the biosphere. Thank you if you try to save some species or some ecosystems here and there, and people working on the pedosphere and the agricultural issues mainly, and then there's the anthroposphere and all these problems. And if one day, miraculously, if one day we solve all these problems, the cancer will still be here, and there are new symptoms which are going to appear. We're just displacing the issue, and we're not solving anything. Now there's another, you may have heard about it, another very important publication, Limits to Growth, 1972. Why is it so important? Because it's still true, because 50 years later, the models that they have come up with are still very much accurate, even though they're simplistic. They're very clever. Yeah, there's an update. Yes, 20 years update. I mean, it's 20-year-old now, this 30-year update. And there's also a translation into French, but I don't think most of you care about that today. So yeah, it's systems dynamics, and we're not going to go into that. It just tells bad things about the future mainly, but it's not a prediction. It is not a prediction. It doesn't say what's going to happen. It just says if you move and change such and such parameter, an entry parameter, then the response of the system will be so and so, basically. But it says, be careful. There are limits to growth on a finite planet, and we need to organize degrowth. Otherwise, we'll hit limits, and otherwise, this will have dire consequences. And we haven't done that. And we're still not doing that, and we still do not intend to do that. There's one thing in particular which is very interesting in this book. It's this. It's the curves are just, I've just put the colors, because it's exactly the same curves as before, the red and the green one. So the question asked here is, how does a system react when you apply to it a pressure which grows over time, which is exactly what we're doing to our planet. On the first two cases, these ones is well, different cases, but they show what happens if the green curve remains above the red one. If the green curve remains above the red one, it's okay. For example, here we destroy more and more. I'm not saying it's good, but the system repairs itself even faster than we destroy it. So it doesn't collapse, right? So here, we're not anymore in this situation. As I showed you before, the red curve is now above the green one, and it's been so for about 50 years. We're somewhere here. What happens when the red curve goes above the green one is that the green one starts decreasing right away. It starts going down. Why? It's because if you start destroying faster than it can regenerate, well, the future capacity to regenerate is less. If you pollute more than the capacity of the system to absorb this pollution, well, the future capacity to absorb more pollution goes down. So now there are two options. Either the red curve goes back down for some reason, somehow, below the green curve quickly, and the system can stabilize and oscillate around an equilibrium point, or we keep growing the pressure, the red curve keeps going up, while we let the green curve go down and collapse. And the bad news is that whatever we do or don't do, the red curve is going to go back down below the green one, because we can't sustainably take more from nature than it can regenerate. We cannot sustainably destroy faster than it can repair itself. It doesn't make any sense. So for some time, a few decades, the red curve can be above the green one, and then it goes back down. We can organize it, or we will suffer it. That's our choice. Because there's a big difference between a red curve which goes down, a green one which hasn't collapsed, and a red curve which goes back down, a green curve which has collapsed. Now this situation here, we're getting very close to that scenario. And this scenario here means that the sum of the pressures of all human activities on Earth collapses. I'll leave it to you to figure out what it means for us. Now we're going to have an energy and material descent. Less energy and less raw materials. And when I say we, it's humanity. So it's not going to be equal. It's not going to happen at the same pace everywhere. And it will depend a lot on the resources, whether you produce them yourself or you have to import them. It's very complex. No one knows exactly what's going to happen, how and when. But what is certain is that we're going to have overall less than that, because the red curve is going to go back down underneath the green one. And because the red curve is going to back down, everyone, you hear me, everyone will have less, and I mean a lot less, energy and materials than today within the next 20 to 30 years. Even the super wealthy, oh, they're not, of course, the worst off, okay? But they think they can go somewhere and live free, and maybe they will move around if it goes berserk. If it goes bad where they are, they can move and go somewhere else. They think they can, get away from it. They're wrong. Even them will feel it in their flesh, will have less of all that to solve ever more problems, because it's going to happen with the climate regime change, with ecological disruptions, scarcity and shortages, long-lasting shortages, perhaps everlasting shortages, societal destabilization and conflicts, and I'm not here to scare you. It's not my point, it's not my aim. I'm just telling you what I know. Let's move a little further. We are vulnerable to all that. Many, many vulnerabilities which we do not see. We think that because we are still rich as countries, that we can get over it. We're wrong. We're wrong because we do not look at the main vulnerabilities of our systems. One of those is transportation. Everything depends on transportation, and there is no transportation network without cheap, abundant oil. Even the train, which doesn't actually consume fuel to run, it runs on electricity, but even the train, without cheap oil, it doesn't work more than maybe a few years at the most. Probably not more than a few months. You need to maintain the tracks, and the people who work there, they need to go to work, and they use their car maybe not so much here, you bicycle people, but still, without oil, no. It doesn't last very long. We depend, it's another vulnerability, on networks and infrastructure that require, I don't know if you know that, but to maintain these, it requires a lot of energy and a lot of materials all the time. If we don't maintain them, well, they just crumble within a few years. More or less, but they do. In France, the infrastructure are getting in a really bad shape. The water network in France, about 0.5% of the network is renewed every year, meaning that to renew the whole network, it would take 200 years. Well, bad news, the network is already 50 to 70 years old, and it has a 60-year lifespan. So, today in France, about 20% of all clean water is lost in the network. And now we have swelling and shrinking soils, which destroy buildings and roads, and it's going to take even more money and fuel and energy and resources and cement and sand to keep those infrastructure in an operational state. In the US, they would have needed, 5 years ago, they would have needed more than $4.5 trillion just to repair their failing infrastructure. They didn't have this amount of money. Well, they have money, so they put on the table around between $800 and $900 billion, which is huge. It's still not even a fifth of what was needed. So we'll see. And then there's another vulnerability, is technology. Technology is presented as a solution, and it can be sometimes. And it's very practical and in many respects very effective, but it's only effective until it stops working. One day it stops working. And one day the system that is conceived, is designed to intervene when it stops working, well, that system itself will stop working. When, how, I can't say. All right, I'm not a fortune teller, but it will stop. And is it a really good idea to put technology everywhere today? We have definitely entered a new era. I don't know how much you know about this, but you need to know about this. We're in a new era. You have Chinese hackers hacking into the US electric grid. Oh, Russian hackers have done the same. They've also hacked into the Ukrainian electric grid. We have hackers infiltrating EV chargers now. They can take control of some of the vehicles from a distance. It's feasible. I saw a video, a guy taking control of a Tesla car from a distance. Entirely control. The person could not drive, could not even open the door. So, is it a good idea? Is it a good idea where you have cyber attacks on pipelines, the biggest, which they don't even actually understand how it happened, and they say they have to learn lessons about their cybersecurity because obviously it's not enough. The US government itself was attacked in a huge global cyber attack. Oil terminals have been disrupted in European ports, here in your country, in Belgium, in Germany. You have cyber attacks disrupting hospital computer systems right now in the US. So is it a good idea to put technology where today and not have backups? We don't have backups. That's the problem. Technology in itself, why not? But we need to have backups in case it stops working or in case it's hacked. In France, we've had a few years ago this report which estimated the self-sufficiency of the 100 largest urban areas in France, and the conclusion is that the self-sufficiency is 2.1% in average, meaning that 97.9% of what people in French cities eat comes from somewhere else. It's not produced locally. Why? Because of the economy. Because of the economy, we need to be competitive. And competitiveness implies that we specialize. You can't be competitive in every domain, so every territory, every region specializes in a few things, and then exports pretty much everything it produces and imports about everything the inhabitants consume. And this way of organizing the world makes sense because we have an abundance of cheap oil. It doesn't cost much to export or import from the other side of the world. Well, when we are going to go out of this specific era, when we have abundant cheap oil, all of this will change, and we'll realize when the logistics of the world stop working, one day, progressively, they start crumbling, we're going to realize that we do not know how to produce here by ourselves in a reasonable area, perimeter, we don't know how to produce what we need to survive, the very basics. So we'll relearn some of it probably, but probably not everything. So challenges ahead here again. We have solutions with quotes, with quote marks. They tell you that we have solutions. And those solutions, pretty much, they're condensed. They're part of what we call sustainable development. So this is the 1987 Brundtland Report, which is the pretty much the official origin of the sustainable development concept. And what does it say? What's the definition of sustainability? Sustainable. From this report. Do you know? I'm sure that many of you have heard that it means that you need to make sure that, so we need to meet our basic needs today, our generation's needs, without hindering the capacity of future generations to meet their own needs. Yeah? That's pretty much what you've heard. That's for you, just for you. That's the definition they give to the public, the general public, because it's not exactly what's in the report. What's in the report is that the capital must not decrease over time. Oh, yes, because you see, the people who wrote this, they're economists. And economists, they have a big problem. Everything they see through the analysis, through the lens of capital. So the actual definition is that the global amount of capital does not decrease over time. That's it. By the way, another problem that we have is that the nature of the ideology that has colonized all economic thinking since the late 1970s, beginning of the 1980s. Today, one school of thought... Well, you have a question or a remark?
A remark?
Yes.
I don't know whether you have told up front that you want intervention during your talk or only after. So
I prefer after, unless there's an understanding problem, something you don't understand, I can re-explain if necessary. If it's not the case, please keep or note down your question. I'll take it. You'll be the first.
No, but it is
yeah.
about the capital you just used. Is that strictly financial capital?
No.
Or is it human capital? Is it biological capital?
Okay, so good question. And I was about to explain it.
All right.
But no, indeed, it's the global amount of capital which is constituted by the sum of all different forms of capital. Which is already a strange concept because you sum up oranges and apples. But anyway, it's like an aggregation of all capital, and that's this aggregation that should not go down over time. But indeed, what does it mean is that I'll answer in a few minutes. What I was saying now is that after the 1970s, one school of thought in economy has just imposed itself in every university in the world. And today, there are still people working on other schools of thoughts, but not that many. So this school of thought is neoclassical thinking. And the neoclassical thing, I'm not going to give you an economic course right now, but the neoclassical thinking is based on a few hypotheses. Those hypotheses, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. I've studied that thoroughly in 2013. It hasn't changed since. And I can tell you that everyone that has a background in sciences, even a one-year background in sciences, can understand how stupid it is. How amazingly, ridiculously stupid it is. And some people cannot believe it. Cannot believe that the models that we use, everyone, very clever people, some of the most clever people in the world, they use these models. But they couldn't use those models if those models were really stupid. Yes, they do. I don't know why or how, but they do. If you look at the hypothesis, everything is wrong in there. So, because I have to move on, and I only have 40 minutes left, I cannot go into details, but I'm going to spot two of those hypotheses, two of them. One of them, we owe it to this French guy, and he wrote in his economic book, Practical Political Economics, in 1828, natural resources are infinite. Otherwise, we would not get them for free. Since they can be neither multiplied nor exhausted, they are not the subject of economics. And today, the models that we use consider then that natural resources are infinite. And some economists think that, okay, they may not be entirely infinite, but they are substitutable. They're infinitely replaceable by other resources. And that's the basic of our system, is economic thinking today. This man was one of the fathers of the classical thinking, which has evolved then into the neoclassical thinking with the same hypothesis. Then they added a few more hypotheses. And later on, some economists worked on growth, specifically growth, and infinite growth. And some of them, this one, for example, which received a Nobel Prize for this, proved mathematically that it was possible to have infinite growth within a finite system. He proved it. So it's true, right? Oh, we forgot that he introduced an hypothesis. What is his hypothesis? The interchangeability of all factors of production factors, you know what you say? All forms of capital are substitutable, interchangeable. That's the hypothesis. Basically, we don't have enough people, we put machines. The machines fail, we replace them by people, interchangeable. We don't have pollinators, pollinizing the flowers and the plants for us, we'll use drones, interchangeable. If you cut all trees on the world, on the planet, imagine, and you leave those trees to rot, what a waste of capital. But if you use this capital to produce tools and plants and factories and tools and energy, well, you don't lose capital. You transform capital into another form of capital. It's sustainable. That's what it means when you hear sustainable development. Now, in the early 1990s, there's a group of economists and scientists who gathered and who said, wait a minute, how can you call this sustainability? It is not sustainable. It can never be. To make sure that this may be sustainable, you have to add a lot of more criteria. For example, that you don't extract resources faster than it can regenerate. You don't produce pollution faster than the system can absorb the pollution. And for the resources that don't regenerate from the lithosphere, you don't use up the stocks faster than we can find substitutes. And other things. It wasn't perfect, but there was a lot of good sense in them. And now, that vision, we call it strong sustainability. And this version of sustainability, we call it now weak sustainability. And if we don't know about that, please do. Please read a little bit about that. It's very important to make the distinction between strong and weak vulnerabilities. And I'm not making any of this up. It's easy to find. You'll figure out by yourself. When you hear sustainable development, it means weak sustainability. When you hear sustainable growth, it means weak growth, weak sustainability. Green growth, green economy, or whatever, it's weak sustainability. And weak sustainability in a world with finite natural resources means unsustainable. Period. We can talk, we can discuss it over and over again, but there's no way to escape from this conclusion. What we call sustainability is unsustainable. It has never worked, and it never will. Since the birth and since the almost generalization of sustainable development everywhere, and CSR, corporate social or societal responsibility, now it's everywhere. Can you feel any change? It doesn't change anything. It's not meant to. And this guy just said that. Because I'll read it just in case. The world can get along without natural resources. He actually said it, and he had the Nobel Prize. You know that the Nobel Prize in economy doesn't exist, right? You do. Yeah, I can see that some people do. It's the prize of the Bank of Sweden in homage, I don't know how they say it, to Alfred Nobel. And they call it Nobel Prize, but it's not really a Nobel Prize. Technology is going to save us, of course. Okay, that's the other part of our ideology. We love technology. We're very good with technology. And when you have a tool, you want this tool to be useful. You have a problem. Well, you're going to use this tool to solve the problem, and you're sure that it's going to work. Because when your tool is a hammer, all problems look like nails. And you're just going to bang on the problems. And you think you're doing something useful. And that's exactly what we do. We do not try to actually find the right responses to this problem, which is systemic. What we do is that we have technical tools, and we try to use them to mend the problem, which cannot be mended with such tools. So because it doesn't work, we change the way we perceive the problem so that it corresponds to what we can do. And we end up only doing what we already know how to do without ever putting ourselves in question. Now, let me tell you about this before I close and move on to the second part of my talk. Degrowth. What the hell are we talking about? What is this degrowth thing? I don't know exactly what the public conversation here in Holland is concerning degrowth. In France, you say that word and you're an activist. Immediately you're an activist. So I'm not here as an activist trying to sell you an idea. I'm here to try to clarify what we're talking about so that you understand how important this is. How incredibly important this is. Degrowth is not the opposite of growth. The word is shit. I don't know who chose that word. Hang him. Degrowth doesn't mean ungrowth, okay? The opposite of growth is recession. And if it goes further and it keeps being, it moves and it moves on, it becomes a depression. And there is no activist of recession. I don't think so. Degrowth is not that. It's a political project. You like it, you don't, but it's a political project. Political project which aims at organizing an energy and material descent because we have to, otherwise we will have to suffer it against our will in chaos. It's a way to organize that without creating a terrible crisis, human and social crisis. Because the people who say, degrowth activists are crazy, it would be a social disaster. Yes, within this system, this economic system cannot degrow. It is meant to grow. It can only grow. But it's not the point. Degrowth activists, they don't want to keep the system and just contract the economy. They want to change the rules of the economic system and the way the social system work to be able to organize this descent without putting in danger populations. So the way the things are presented to us is this. Well, there are two subjectivities, 2 points of view, 2 ways, 2 visions of the world. It's your opinion. It's your choice. It's a set of value. It's an ideology. It's choose whatever you want. They're both equal, basically, just 2 ideas. It's subjective. On the one hand, some who say that green growth is possible. On the other hand, some who say it's not. The difference, you see, is that on this side, it does not take into account biophysical parameters, ecological limits, and laws with an S of nature. And on that side, it does. That's the difference. Now, There are many ways of understanding degrowth, what we can do, how we can do it. Even degrowth activists disagree with each other, so I'm not selling you any precise idea. I'm just telling you that we need to organize an energy and material descent, that this will go with an economic contraction, and that we have two choices. Either we do not change the system, and this economic contraction will turn into a human and social disaster, or we change the economic and social system so that we can organize this contraction through degrowth and not depression. Am I clear? We need to really understand that it's a political project which aims at going from an unsustainable growth-based social societal paradigm into a sustainable post-growth one. That's the idea. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's never actually been done completely at the scale of a whole country. So there are really important questions to ask about this, and we're going to ask them now. But that's the final slide of my first part. I need to accelerate. Sorry. But yeah, people may think, you may think right now that, it's too late, right? There's no hope. I don't want to hear anything like this. This doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's too late for what? For some things, yes. For other things, no. There are things that need to be protected, preserved, saved. We need to, take care of those things. Is it too late to avoid a disaster? Yes. Yes, I apologize. Yes, we're going to come up against challenges that we've never had to come up against. And when I say we, I mean humanity in the past centuries, probably. Even the great wars. Nothing compares to what's coming. The rate of change in the forthcoming 20, 30, 40, 50 years is going to be astonishing. It's going to be harsh. But, so it's too late to avoid a catastrophe. Yes. Now, is it too late to avoid another, even more serious catastrophe? No. Because it's not as if the word was everything's fine versus catastrophe. No, there's an infinite array of catastrophes that are possible. Now, we need to make sure that the catastrophe we can handle, the catastrophe we can deal with in a human way if possible. And maybe after a difficult time, we can move on and maybe even realize that we were not that happy in that system. And from some aspects, we can even become more happier. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. There's going to be lots of problems. But still, this never-ending race that drives us mad is going to stop. That's a good point. And all our addictions to stupid stuff, online mostly, is gonna dwindle and eventually it's gonna stop. Good, I would say. There's no hope? Well, for this system, no. But for another one, yes. There is hope. There is hope if we build it. So how do we react? How do we react to all what I said before? It works, it happens in our heads, first of all. First of all, it's about deconstructing some ideas. The first of those ideas, perhaps, is this one. We have solutions, or they will find solutions. Who is they? I know they, personally, and they haven't got any solutions. I've worked with they for some time. I've even been part of they for about 10 years, trying to find solutions. They don't have a clue. You may think that the politicians, the decision makers, and the rich people, they know all this. No, they don't. No, they don't. They know some things. They know their problems. They know their challenges and risks, and that maybe their life is at stake. They know that, but the systemics of it, no, they don't know. They still think that we can find solutions. They still think that we're great and we'll find our way out as usual, as always. They still think that technology will save us and we'll save them. They're wrong. We need to come up with new ways of seeing the world and telling the world, new stories, because stories influence our perception of what tomorrow could or should be. For example, is this the future that we want to promote? Many people want to promote this. It's presented as progress, smart city, with interconnected objects and people everywhere, which optimizes everything. No traffic jams evermore. Great. Well, first, the amount of pressure on nature of a smart city is incredible. It's gigantic. It's thousands and thousands and millions of small objects everywhere, which have a 2 to 3 year lifespan all the time. Second, an electronic city, a smart city, is hackable. And it will be hacked. It's a huge vulnerability. Third, a smart city is the dream of all dictator. So, think. Be careful what you wish for. Is this, to go even a little further, the future we want to promote? Oh, Elon Musk, that's what he wants. He's got Neuralink, that Neuralink is a company which aims at inserting microchips into human brains. What I usually say is, go ahead, man, have your chip implanted, and we'll have a laugh when it gets hacked. Then, is this the future we want? Is this the future we want? Oh, look at that, nice people. Nice people coming together locally to produce part of their energy on food and habitat. That's interesting. That's good. It's concrete, it's practical, and they do it together. Very good. But who wants that? Always the same ones. A few percent of the population in our countries. Oh, it's not enough. We need more. We need more ideas. We need more ways to present them. We need more people to incarnate them. We need different ways of telling the same stories, the same ideas, but in different manners, so that that guy over there who's walking is going to say, hey, interesting. I'm sure it does not today. We need to come up with a new array of narratives and visions. And we need that. We need an electroshock. A strong one, a real one. I'm not talking about lying to people. I haven't lied to you today. Just telling the truth, the way it is. It's frightening, and it's good. We ought to be scared. It's time to get scared, people. Now, some say to me, scaring people paralyzes people. It's the wrong way to do. It's dangerous. Arthur Keller, I don't like this guy because he scares people. And it hinders change. What? No, it does not. Never. I'm not the one who says it. Scientists say it. In 2015, there was this big meta-analysis. They just summed up the 127 studies about fear as is it effective? Are fear appeals effective to move people, to mobilize people? The answer is yes, every time. Always, the best way to mobilize people is to scare them. And of course, I mean, many guys, many politicians have understood that, right? They scare people to mobilize them in other ways. It's not the same fear, right? Their fear is irrational or irrationally pumped up. Mine is as honest as I can and scientifically based. Two different fears. However, yes, fear is absolutely necessary to actually move people for real. Because you can mobilize many people to do small things without scaring them. But we don't need small things now. We need big things. We need people to set into question their whole lives and our lifestyles, our societies themselves in the whole. And to do that, each one of us and together, and to mobilize strongly and to organize in forms of resistance to, and all this, and to take risks. Why would you do this if you're not scared? So, if you scare people, I can't tell you that everyone will act, but I can tell you something, that everyone who acts does it because they're scared. The people who change their lives, the people who actually really mobilize, they are scared, and that's why they do it. And they do it then by, creating something, using their fear for something collective, cultural, constructive, something useful. Because yes, fear is necessary, but fear alone is bad. Oh yeah, you move people. Oh yeah, they will change. But how? How will they change? Not in a good way, most of the times. So how to make sure they do change and that it moves toward, I would say, general interest, okay? How do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to understand that the war between different visions of the future is underway. There's the overall vision, which is to infinity and beyond. We're great. We've always been great. We'll still be great tomorrow, and we'll solve all the problems, and that's it. And yeah, there will be crisis, but okay, we'll move. We'll pass. We'll survive those crises. Unfortunately, maybe, this vision of the world is about to hit limits, to collide with the real world, and in a few years or decades, I would say years, it won't exist. It will not exist under the form that we know it today. And what's going to replace this vision of the world? I believe that what's going to replace this vision of the world is other types of ways of seeing the world and seeing oneself in the world. Basically, I can sum up all these different ways of seeing the world. It's us against them. That's how I would put it. All the different ways of seeing the world, it's us against them. Well, there's another way to do things. It's us with them. And us with them works much better. And I'm not telling you that I prefer us with them because ideologically I am more inclined to like that version. No, I'm talking to you as an expert of resilient systems, and I'm telling you that you cannot be resilient, you cannot be secure inside a society which is not resilient, which is not secure. You can imagine that you will be autonomous, for example, and the people around you who are not are going to leave you with your autonomy without interacting with you in some way. No, it's societal or it's not. So there is no actual resilience and no security if it's not intra and inter. No, that doesn't work in English. It works in French. If it's not within communities and between communities, if it's not within localities and territories, and also between localities and territories, and that has to be organized now. We need inspiring visions that convey hope, because we need hope to act, but lucid hope, not silly hopes which do not compute. The last thing now is the sphere of acts. Once you've worked on your inner self, what can you do about the world? And we're going to talk now about resilience. Resilience, you've heard about resilience, but I'm not going to tell you about what you've heard already. I'm going to tell you about a different form of resilience, the one that only a systemic thinker can think of. It's systemic resilience, and it's very different from all the other forms of resilience you've heard so far. The resilience you've heard, it's different types of resilience you've heard about. They're specific resilience. There's the resilience of something. It can be an infrastructure. It can be an information system. It can be crops or a whole society faced to one specific type of problem. So you have climate resilience, you have food resilience, you have energy resilience, you have all these different types of resilience are very specific. And they're part of adaptation. Now, mainly today, when you hear people, when you hear people making propositions, for measures, political measures, what the NGOs produce as ideas, it really, I don't know if there are exceptions. I think there are a few exceptions, but 90%, 99% of the time, it's either mitigation measures or adaptation measures, how we mitigate the problems and how we adapt our societies to the problems. The resilience I'm going to talk to you about is neither a mitigation nor an adaptation measure. It's something else. When you hear what the IPCC talks about, the resilience of the IPCC is an adaptation measure. But it's not systemic. Of course, most climate scientists would disagree. But yes, it is systemic, okay? Climate change is a systemic issue, right? Arthur Keller thinks that he's the only one who knows systemics. No, okay, I'm a climate scientist. I deal with a systemic issue. Yes, in your silo. And all the other silos are systemic. The water question is systemic. Biodiversity, even if we don't feel it as concretely in our urban lives, is systemic. Resources, systemic. Energy, systemic. Even pollution, systemic. All the problems are systemic. But they're not. They're not connected to each other the right way if you don't look at the overall, the overarching systemic, which is the systemics of the system, the complex dynamic system, which is composed of the Earth system and all its dimensions and the anthroposphere. You need to understand all that to then go back down into the problems and the symptoms and how it translates for us concretely. So, resilience overall is presented, and it's true, like this. You have a system, and a shock arrives. Well, it's the capacity of the shock to be prepared. That's part of the resilience. Then to react, how you react to this shock. If the shock is strong, you can just resist. If it's too strong, then you need to move along the shock. You need to adapt to it, transform, and go back into a degraded mode, and come down to a degraded mode. And then you can go, after the worst of the crisis, you can go back up, and ideally, you evolve to a new state, which is even more resilient than before. Okay, that's the theory. That's the theory. I'm going to adapt this theory to my topic then, systemic risk. Not just risk, systemic risk. And you'll understand why it's neither part, what I'm going to propose is neither part of adaptation nor mitigation. Risks in general are events that may happen tomorrow. And they will start at some point, at some place, and they will end a little further in time. So they're limited in time and space. These events, to deal with them, we have risk prevention and, if need be, crisis management. Crisis management, what's the aim of crisis management? To go back to the normal, right? As fast as possible. So there are two implicit hypotheses between this way of dealing with risk. And I've talked about this to hundreds of risk managers, literally hundreds, and none of them had realized what I'm about to tell you. When I told them that, they said, fuck, you're right. All of them. But they had never thought of it this way. Two implicit hypotheses. The first is that this system is good and it needs to be protected. Other hypothesis, the system is viable and it can be maintained. The first hypothesis is highly ideological. I disagree that this system is good, for example, but we can talk about it. Second hypothesis is just plainly false. The system is no longer viable, and trying to go back to the normal is, as you fall in a tree, trying to grab a branch which itself is failing, which itself is broken. It's not going to work. Now, I'm telling you about processes, not events, processes that have started already, and they're going to intensify. They're going to get worse over time, and they're not going to end There's no end to those processes. We go along and we understand those processes, and we try to manage the change in advance, or we'll suffer it in chaos. We need systemic resilience, our capacity to come together spontaneously as societies in equilibrium with our environment in case of a shock which just disrupts the continuity of our lives, definitely, forever. If this happens, if, for example, the supply chains that supply us with our food come to grind to a halt, if that happens, are we going to be able collect and on top of that we realize that the state, the government, has not planned for this, because it hasn't. Let me tell you, it hasn't. If there's food missing at one place for a few weeks, of course they can deal with that. No, I'm telling you that if your whole country, if a whole part of Europe finds itself within a few months, within 2 or 3 years, with 30 or 40% less oil at a much higher price, then it's not going to be one or a few places with no food. It's going to be a huge amount of the population with 10% of the food they need. And they have not thought about it. I know, because I tried to talk to them about this and they don't want to listen. If that happens and people realize they're on their own, well, are they resilient? Are they going to be able to spontaneously organize collectively so that it's not chaos? Bad news? No. Good news? It's possible. We know how to do it. I'm part of the few ones who teach it. Let's do it. So imagine I have about 5 minutes left and I need 12 to 13 minutes. Are there any objections? Okay, thank you very much for your indulgence. Imagine that, oops, oh no, sorry, I forgot this. Yeah, on the left hand, the statu quo is maintained. On the right hand, that's a process. That systemic resilience is necessarily transformative. It's collective. It's cultural. It has to be. It's empowering people. Whereas on the other side, it's not. That's the main difference. It's completely different. It's another approach. So when people tell me, well, what can we do? It's too complex. There are too many things. We're gonna have to focus on this aspect and this one because we can't change everything at the same time. Changing everything at the same time is not systemic. It's multidimensional. And true, it's difficult to deal with everything at the same time. So do things with as much coherence as you can. Systemics call for another state of mind, for another way of dealing with things. It's cultural. It's how you mobilize people, how you become an agent of cultural change with risk, a culture of risk, a culture of responsibility, and a culture of solidarity, as I'm going to tell you just after that. So imagine that, as I said before, we're exiting, we're leaving this period of time with abundant cheap oil. And you see all the implications that it has. And now, reimagine that in the forthcoming years, we've developed energy production systems that can be operated and maintained with only what we have within a manageable geographic area for things that are very important. For example, energy. You should not depend on systems, on skills, on equipment that come from on energy, on fuels that you do not produce yourself. You should not. And you should not aim for the most performant system. You should aim for a reasonably performant system, which is going to be robust in a degraded mode. That's what you need. Reliable and robust. That works for the energy production systems. It works for food production systems, of course. We need to move towards autonomy from one end to the other of the value chain of what's most important. Food, of course. What do we need to produce food? We need seeds that most seeds we do not produce ourselves. We need intrants, and those intrants are produced somewhere else. They need those intrants, cheap fuel, cheap oil, or cheap gas, or both, to be produced. We need cheap oil. We need machines that we don't build ourselves. They're too complicated. If you don't upgrade regularly, if you don't upgrade the software, it stops working. If it fails, you need to order a piece of equipment, which most of the times comes from the US or China. And we need what else? Money from Europe, otherwise the whole system crumbles. And we need people. We need a workforce that comes from abroad every year to produce for us, low cost. Well, when there's not going to be enough cheap oil, these people won't be able to come anymore, maybe. So what are we going to do about this? It works also for transportation and mobility systems. Today, we hear about new vehicles. We're going to basically put batteries everywhere, and we're going to transform our park of our automobile park. You say that? Automobile, yeah. We're going to transform it from a thermal one to an electric one. Yeah, it's not the right question to ask. That's once again taking the problem through the very small hole of technical parameters. No, we first need to understand, to figure out what new transportation systems we need and what new transportation and mobility offers that we need. But to answer that, we need to know what new uses in terms of mobility and transport we need. And to know that, we need to reassess collectively mobility and transportation needs. This is an alternate model of society that needs to be discussed. It's a discussion. It's a systemic and cultural approach. That's how we have to tackle it, not from the technical side. Once again, we're wrong. We're doing the wrong thing. We need now to ask these strategic and inconvenient questions. For example, how can anyone anywhere, even mostly in the countryside, because they produce our food, live a satisfying life, meet their everyday needs, ensure their safety and that of their loved ones, fulfill themselves in a sustainable fashion without having to own a vehicle? Now, please work on this if you can. Work on this, because they're not working on this. Decision makers are not working on this. Car manufacturers, they're not working on this. Transportation operators are not working on this. They're working on cities, mainly, and nobody, almost, is working on what can we do to make sure that people can live tomorrow in the countryside when the gas station next to them gets empty, when it's not refilled anymore. How are they going to do? Take a look at low-tech innovation. Please, you go on the Wikipedia, and you will find this infographic with the legend, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything. And please take a look at it. Low-tech is not just no-tech, okay? It's a real topic. It's a real it's a strategic issue for industry and innovation. And it has the potential to bring solutions, to create solutions that tackle at the same time the imperative, the necessity of strong sustainability, collective resilience, and cultural transformation. Take a look at that. We need to preserve agricultural land, even if it's not your topic. You need to somehow support people who do that, preserve agricultural land from artificialization. Agroecology. If you don't know about agroecology, it's not too late. Please, please. Agroecology and some other ways to produce food is a solution. And I'm not using this word very often. Most of the ideas and options that we have, they're just trade-offs. But this is really a solution. It can produce sustainably while regenerating nature. It works. The problem is that it's not as efficient from an economical point of view, because it needs much more people to work than the current system that we have. And the current system that we have, they're not going to disappear by themselves. They're not even going to evolve, because it's going to be less profitable for them. So you need to get rid of them. We need to get rid of them. Find the right way to do it. Now, we need to put some vegetation in the cities, in urban areas, but for food, okay? It's very important as well. People just produce a small part of their food. They do it together with people from the from the neighborhood, people from other places. They get to know each other, they get to talk about issues, and from time to time they get to cook a meal and have fun together with what they've produced themselves. It's really good for resilience. We need to close the nutrient cycles like phosphorus, as I said before, I'm not going back to it. We need short food supply systems. We need local economies with local currencies and local exchange trading systems, because the current economic system is going to fail. I'm not at all capable of telling you when and how, and if it's going to fail suddenly or gradually, thoroughly, entirely, or just partly, I don't know. But as it exists right now, it is bound to fail, because it can only be sustained if it keeps growing, and it can only keep growing if there's ever more energy and material supply, which is right now impossible. So it's going to end. Now, if we wait without creating our own versions, local versions of economies, local economies, if we wait until the system fails, then it's going to be terrible. But if we made sure that the people who produce and those who consume, those who transform, those who transport, the restaurators, the restaurants as well, those people, if they work together using their local currencies, they can keep working tomorrow, even if there's a big financial and economic and monetary collapse. Even in this scenario. We need redundancies and backups within the systems, collective stockpiles, and everything I said must be thought of and done in solidarity, inclusiveness, and social justice, not because I think it's better, but because otherwise it's not going to work, simply, okay? Once again, I'm an expert of resilient systems, and I'm telling you it's not going to work. Otherwise, what I say to people is that if you're naturally inclined to the well-being of the next man, good. If you are not, act in solidarity for your own sake, for your own interest. It works as well. Okay, now to finish, a few more ideas and then I'm done. This idea is very important. We need to make sure that we understand our needs, collective needs, and those needs to be fulfilled depend on certain things. Those things must be preserved, and they must be managed collectively with the people, by the people whose future depend on them themselves. Not some company somewhere, not an elected official who maybe will not be there anymore in 5 years. No, the people who live there must come together and organize and manage what they need for their future, to ensure their future. It's very important. Read, if you don't know them, the works of Elinor Ostrom about this. And what if we guaranteed the satisfaction of everything, the basic needs for everyone? What if everyone had the basics? First liters of water, first kilowatt hours of electricity, first cubic meters of gas, first public transport, and why not food? Why not damn it! You say pourquoi les fringues? Yeah, clothes. I was looking for another word, but yeah, clothes. Yeah, clothes. Of course, clothes. And why not even clothes? Why not socks and what if everyone could have the basics to live for free or very little money, just the basics, to survive? And then you need to pay, and if you consume a lot, you pay very expensively, and overall, it doesn't cost anything to society. And that would change everything. Everything. Because then people would not be so scared of the future. Maybe they wouldn't be very optimistic about everything, but still, they would know that next week and next month and in 6 months, they will have enough, just enough, even in the worst case scenario, to feed their kids. And if that happens, and we have the possibility to organize that. If that happens, they will take chances. They will innovate. They will create. You know, I hear very often, but people will come up with new ideas. Not if they're hungry. Not if they're hungry. Not if they don't know how their kids are gonna survive. So if we make sure that this is not an issue anymore, yes, they will come up with ideas and creativity, and among what they will come up with, there's going to be good ideas. A lot of good ideas. Some bad ones I know too, but let's liberate people's creativity. It will happen through experiments and participative projects. To finish, we talk here about subjects and topics and notions like resilience and sustainability. There are two ways of seeing things. The first thing is what can I do to be more sustainable, more resilient, myself? And the other question is, how can I imply myself? How can I mobilize people around me so that we are agents of collective, local, regional, and maybe societal sustainability and resilience? And for organizations, whichever form of organization we're talking about, we can make organizations more sustainable and resilient or less destructive by adapting their practices and their business models, maybe. Or we can connect organizations to form a network of agents of societal and sustainability and resilience. And to me, that's where it happens. That's where we need to be and to focus. I was going to say very often, not very often. I would say on a regular basis, companies contact me and say, Mr. Keller, you're a specialist of resilience. We'd like you to come and explain to us how we can make our company more resilient. Which I say, you mean your business? Yes, but also, people and stuff. Yeah, your business. Yeah, okay. I don't care about your business. I cannot tell you, I don't want to tell you how to make your company more resilient if also you do not work to make sure that your company becomes an agent of societal resilience. That I can teach you. If that is your interest, then we can talk and do something. Right. It starts with conversations. It doesn't cost anything. With you, within each other, here, with your friends, not family, not with your family, it's dangerous. With your friends, colleagues, and maybe your neighbors, you organize conversations about the future. Hey, I want to, you put a paper somewhere or on a Facebook page, whatever, and you say, I want to have conversations about the future. Maybe we can do something about it. I want to talk about the risks. I want to talk about things that are actually quite frightening. I want to talk about our vulnerabilities. And then I want to talk about our strengths, our diversity of ideas, what we can do about it, and what gives us hope, and how we can build that hope together. And that will move people, and these conversations will turn into projects, I hope. Wait a minute. And these projects, you know what? You have to document them. You have to take videos, and you have to note down everything that happens, things that work, things that don't work, why, if you can analyze it. And you have to also, you must have KPIs, you must have indicators. Okay, this is concretely where the project has impacts, which we can quantify. And on top of that, you need to have testimonies. There's another sort of people. What do they feel? It's subjective. How do they feel about it? Are they scared? Maybe that they come first because they're scared, and fear is their their main emotion. And maybe 5 years later in the project, they'll still be scared, but the main emotion is hope. It's not fear anymore. And that in itself, how it evolves over time, is really important. And you need images, you need pictures and videos of the people and of the places and how they evolve. And with that, with your project, your small project, you can tell 3 years later, 5 years later, depends on the project, you can tell the story. Look how many we were, how we were, what we said. Look at the place we were in 5 years ago, and look now. Look now where we're at. That transformation is inspiring. Because it's inspiring, it will propagate through the networks. And your project is not your project. You are an agent of change, cultural change, and your project will save the world. Need to come up with inspiring alternatives. It all works together. It's a network. an ecosystem of actors with thinkers, makers, inspirers, organizers, and facilitators. The thinkers, they study, conceptualize, and make recommendations. That's what I do. The makers, they develop, they lead by example, and they share what they know. I don't do it really, a little bit, but some do it much more than me. Inspirers, people who shape stories, spread the word, make change inspiring. I'm trying to be one of those. I hope it worked with some of you today. Organizers are people who structure, animate, coordinate a project, a network, a dynamic. I'm not an organizer. And people can be facilitators if they have means. It can be money to fund or something else, provide resources, a place, some tools, equipment, some specific skills at a specific time. They know how to empower people. I told you where I try to be in that star. Now, the question is, what agent of change are you? What agent of change can you be? And probably most importantly, what agent of change do you want to be? Find that about yourself, then find yourselves and constitute project teams and network to make sure that those projects are connected with other projects, and just mobilize, just go for it now. We're at a crossroads, and ladies and gentlemen, we either wake up or we'll break down. Thank you. Thank you. And I apologize for the timer. Once again, I was a little too long than I thought I could be.
Test. Wow, I think we covered a lot. Shall we make some more noise for Arthur, please?
Thanks. Thanks, I appreciate it. Oh, it's either you or me. No? We can speak both at the same time? Okay. Thanks.
Talking about basic needs, if you need to pee, please feel free to go. If you want to stretch your legs, please
recycle
do
your phosphorus, please.
But we have the room for another 20 minutes. So if you still have questions, even though he covered a lot, then please raise your hand. I will come to you, and you need to talk in the mic loudly so that the recording can basically understand what you're saying. Does anybody have questions?
There.
I saw.
And behind the pole as well. There's a woman there.
Okay, we'll start with the back.
Thank you.
Guys.
Hello. Well, thanks a lot. Anyway, just have a question to land ownership. I mean, if we are talking about sharing food, spread the word, and we do everything together. I mean, this is sort of a problem. Well, I think of at this moment. I mean, I come from the countryside, and you know, there are farmers, small farmers, big farmers, farmers who pollute, farmers who try to do good. What do you think about that? Can you tell something about that?
I'm not entirely sure I understand your question. I figure out, I get the feeling that indeed it's not going to be easy to organize working together and sharing in this world where people are rather, you know, it's mine. People think that it's their property, and then you have producers as well who it's their job and it's their income. So why would they share? It's real strange. Yeah, of course, we're in this kind of society. So what I suggest, generally speaking, here we're talking about the countryside and we're talking about food production, but it's the same with every topic. With every topic, almost, I think, you have a system which exists, and what I'm telling you is that this system is not going to work for a long time now, and that we have to change that. Now, the question is how do you change the system? How do you change it? Well, you can't change the system. You can't actually really change a complex system. Oh, I feel that in your head something's happening right now. So what is he saying? So it's impossible? I don't get it. Yeah, you know, you can't change. You can change many things within the system, all right? You can make sure that some things are better, that some things are less destructive. We would need, ideally, a conversation and political decisions to discuss together what we want to keep, what we want to grow. Some things need to grow. And what we need to curb down, and what we need to stop. And we should, ideally, we would have a conversation about what do we renounce. Is that a proper way to say it? What do we renounce to, maybe? We should have that conversation. So maybe we will have some of it, parts of that conversation, but generally speaking, it's incompatible with the system as it exists. And it will probably not happen because you have lock-ins, things are locked in within the system, and you have power relations which are locked in, and they will make sure that which would change the power relations, they will make sure that this does not happen, not fully, not at the right scale. So you can change partly some part of the system, make it less destructive, but you do not change the system. So what I'm telling you, because maybe it wasn't very clear, but is not that I believe that we can change the system, is that I believe that we could propose something else on the side using the margins. We still have margins, geographical margins, money, and we still have a space to express ideas politically as citizens. There are many margins that we can exploit. Why? Is it going to be enough? No, it's not going to be enough. But let me go to the end of that idea, because it's very important. We need today to experiment, and I hope to validate different ideas about how we could reorganize society itself. So we need to produce things differently. We need to produce different things and produce them differently. We need food and stuff. We need to regenerate the environment here and there. We need to work on how we make decisions together in different ways, how we come together and decide together. So a new local political ways of dealing with issues and making decisions. For example, citizen... on appelle ça oui, c'est ça, oui. For example, a citizen assembly, an assembly of citizens, some things like that. Why not try that? We need to test new ideas when it comes to redistribution of, not necessarily of income, but yes, I think we should have a ceiling how do you say, a maximum and a minimum income. Well, I don't know, because I have my automatic expressions that come to my mind in French, I'm sorry. Never mind. So we need to work on this as well, income, and also redistribution of things, not just income. How people have access to water and energy, and that's another form of distribution. And in France, right now, we have the food social security, which is something which is starting to be tested in some cities, small cities. People have access for free to some food. Anyway, so we need to test all that. Will that be enough so that tomorrow we have a new society that emerges and we could say, hey, let's move on to system A towards system B? No. It's not going to be enough. But if we have tested, and I hope validated here, there, everywhere, in many places, those different elements, and if we have put them into stories, which then have propagated because they're inspiring, so because they propagate, many people hear about that. There are some people, they're going to switch. They're going to say, oh yeah, that's great, I'm going to do this. Most people, they won't. They won't, so it's not going to change. But the idea is there, and that changes everything. That changes everything for the moment, or rather, let's say for the moments, there are going to be several moments, where there's going to be a tipping point. There's going to be many tipping points. And in these precise times, it's going to make the whole difference. People whose livelihood is no longer possible, they can no longer fulfill their basic needs. When that happens, there's a big difference between, oh, how do? I have no idea and I have no plan B, and, oh, I've heard about that. I know that there are some people around here who work on that. It sounds interesting and inspiring. I'm going to try to do that. So what I'm telling you is not how you change the system. Impossible. But it doesn't mean you don't have to work on the system to limit its destructive impacts. I'm not even telling you how you build another society on the side, because no one has the means to do that. Just test and validate and make sure everybody knows about it, some different parts, which tomorrow can be put together as a puzzle and become a new model of society when need be, when we when we experience the tipping points that are ahead. I hope this is clear. I'm much more effective when I explain this in French. I'm sorry, but I did my best. I hope it's clear.
We'll take 2 or 3 questions, maybe.
I'll try to be shorter as well.
Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much for your lecture. My question is, I've spoken to many people who try to deny climate change or the problems that we are facing. And let's just give one short example. My friend, he denies to believe that oil comes from fossil fuels and that oil is finite. Yeah. So how do I approach those people to make them scared and...
Okay. Three things to say. First thing, you can try a few arguments. For example, when it comes to climate change, there's a good one. A good one to know that it comes from human activities is that we know, it's not a theory, we know that the carbon that's in the atmosphere has an isotopic signature with carbon-13, which is specific of carbon fuels, of hydrocarbons. So we know that the carbon which is up there in the atmosphere comes from the burning of fossil fuels, therefore from human activity. Period. We know. Now, this first thing I wanted to say is an argument. There are many other arguments, but arguments are for people who can debate and who can think properly. Second thing I want to say, you will not convince everyone, and you should not try to. You should just free yourself of this burden. Some people will change over time. Over time. It never happens like this, almost never happens like this. You should leave them time. And some people will never change. If that person is not important in your life, just move away, move along. They're toxic. If they're part of your family or friends, well, be patient and see what happens. But don't try to convince everyone. And try to work and to find and identify those who are ready and work with them. Do things, tell those things, put them into stories, be inspiring, and maybe those people you could not at one point convince, maybe they'll end up joining you. Third thing I want to say, when people have this type of posture, when they position themselves like this, it means that there's something more than just understanding or knowledge. It's not about knowledge. It's more than that. It's ideological. They really want to not understand. It's not that they don't want to understand. It's that they want to not understand. They want to. And they are not convincible. Okay? So with these people, the only thing you may try is to give them some content to watch and read. Say, hey, look at that. I thought it was great. Look at it. So no pressure. Some things that are easy, not too complicated. And things that do not talk about your topic. Not the topic you want to convince them about, but things that convey important messages about critical thinking, about methodology. Today, the problem is that there are many people who are critic, and because they criticize easily things. They think they have a critical mind. They don't have a critical mind. They don't have the critical thought. They lack method. Okay, and method. So that's the most important thing. And then just ask them questions. Hey, have you thought of that as a possible, I don't know, scenario? Yeah, I don't think it's possible. Okay, I think it is possible. And have you thought of that and that? And one day you'll find a scenario for which they say, oh yeah, that could happen. Oh, great. And how do you think we would react as a society if that happened? This big crisis, if that happened? Well, we'll talk about it next time. Then you move away, you leave them think. You just try to find the right questions, the questions which lead to them realizing that, there's something missing in their way of thinking. And maybe they will, from that point, they will figure out by themselves other ways of seeing the world, blah, blah, blah. Difficult, just so free yourself from this.
You should bring him here next time. Or send him the talk. Arthur, if that's okay with you, I'll take 2 questions at the same time, yeah?
Yep.
Hello, thank you for your lecture. My question is, do you think that the resilient megacity is an oxymoron? And the reason that I ask this is the population densities are so high and the locked-in dependencies...
The resilient megacities.
Megacities.
I didn't understand. Okay, yeah, sure.
The locked-in dependencies to landowners, to transportation, to food systems, water systems, electricity systems are so ingrained in these megacities that do you think that it is even a project worth venturing on, trying to create resilient societies in a city, or is it worth abandoning and living in the countryside?
Thank you. Joris, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think it's kind of connected to the question. I was wondering in the slide about the systems, the electronic systems and stuff, you were talking about the right geographical area. And I was wondering what, in your opinion, is the right geographical area?
It's kind of linked to megacities and stuff. Okay, see, today, if you look at some rankings of the most resilient cities, even the question in itself, resilient cities, isn't that, to some extent, that could be an oxymoron, right? You don't really know. So anyway, you have rankings, and I don't know now, but a few years ago, Atlanta was deemed to be the most resilient city in the world. What are we talking about? What does it mean, resilient in this case? Well, I guess, you know, it's what I was saying before. Many people use the term resilient for many different things in different areas. So for most people, resilience means, are they ready? They're prepared. By the way, there's a difference between preparedness and resilience, but anyway. Are they prepared to deal with some specific crisis? For example, in some areas, you have seismic risk. In other areas, you have a risk of tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff. So are the people resilient because they know that it can happen and they know what to do if it happens? They're ready. Well, that's one definition, one approach of resilience. Now, from my point of view, the resilience I'm talking about, which has, you understood it, I think, which has a lot to do with supply chains. Not just the disruptions of the world and environmental issues, but also our infrastructure and supply chains. And the way the economy is organized, are we resilient? No. Nowhere. At this point, nowhere. There's no resilient community I know of. And by the way, even if there is one, well, if around it it's not resilient, they're not going to stay resilient. So it doesn't make any sense. You cannot be resilient alone. So nowhere is really resilient, as I see it. But for you can there are many places which try things. It's an ongoing project. It's a work in progress. They try things in terms of food production and energy and local community. They form a local community of actors, and they have their local alternative currency and stuff. And they try things, and sometimes it works well, sometimes less well. But there are many options. And today, it's possible for a community to organize its resilience by, picking all the different examples from other places, talking with the people who did it, what worked, what didn't work, what would be your advice, and then they try to do it their own way where they are, and they can work on all the different topics at the same time or one after the other and move toward some sort of resilience. Now, the right scale to do it, there's no actual demonstration of it. It's not mathematical, because the actual only possible answer is it depends. It depends on the geography. It depends on the people, the density of population. Is it an urban population? Is it a very wild? Is there a lot of wildlife or not? Or is it? It depends. I would say though that from what I know, because I've researched this question for a long time. From what I know, most systems thinkers of resilience agree that there's an order of magnitude that spans between, I would say, between a few thousand and maybe 100,000 tops people. 100,000 is a lot. So most thinkers would say between 5 and 30,000, 40,000. That's pretty much the idea. Smaller than that is a bad idea as well. Smaller than that, you're not resilient towards shocks and problems which are bigger than you when they arise. So you need to have a certain mass. But bigger, well, then again, if it's bigger than that, you are dependent on supply chains that you do not master. So yeah, that's the general idea. And to finish answering your question, so a mega city is far beyond that. It cannot be resilient in the way I see it. It cannot. The only way it may tend to some form of resilience is by being cut into different pieces. There's one approach. It's called bioregions. If you look at what the bioregions are, is how you redraw a territory according to new, not administrative definitions, but new definitions based on geography and people and culture. And you can then have a little piece of city, a little piece of suburban area, and a big piece of land, campagne, countryside. And I'm not sure it's possible everywhere. So anyway, there's no way we will not have to face dire consequences, big problems, especially in cities. Last but not least, very small but important, very short but important. Many people think that they must leave the city. And pretty much you said, why not leave and go live on the countryside? Well, my advice, we don't need people in the countryside. Society doesn't need people in the countryside. Society needs people in the countryside that actually work to build collective resilience. Yes, if you are there and you do that and you connect with other people and you're part of a network which will come together in case of a crisis, help each other, help the others if they can. If you're part of that and you build your resilience, so yes, go live on the countryside. You're going to be better off than in the city. But if you're not doing that, if you just live on the countryside in a house and just do your own, grow your own vegetables, no. Wrong idea, because I speak in French now. Because what may happen, I believe, is that the first crisis will come from fossil fuels, from oil, and the worst impacts are going to be on the countryside, in the countryside, and it's going to be terrible, and nothing can prevent the crisis and the violence that will come of it. Therefore, I believe that the state, the government, will have only one choice. It's to protect the cities. And I believe that in the short run, and I don't know if the short run is 1 year, 5 years, or 25 years. I have no idea. But in that period of time, you're going to be better off living in the city than on the countryside until the breaking point, because there's always a breaking point, when then it's going to be the opposite. Hard to say.
Last two questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Here and
Yeah.
she was. Oh,
I also
yeah.
I also have
Okay.
a question. Yeah, sorry. If communication is so important, as you mentioned in your lecture, why haven't schools implemented mandatory courses, classes, like ways to communicate and actually, like, you know, because I feel like that would be a great starting point to really kind of get even the younger generations to kind of understand what's going on, you know? So what's up there?
We need. Oh, yeah, no. There's another question. Yeah, two at a time. Yes.
I see your criticism against the economists. Do you recommend some good some good reading with more resilient thinking and then more suitable for our times? Yeah, economics. Yeah.
In economics.
There's a connected question.
My question connects to yours. So we're in a system in developed countries here in Western Europe, and I came from a really undeveloped country thinking that my worlds will open suddenly here.
Where you come from?
And now Bosnia. And I walk into these open-minded people's ideas and share them in this exact concept that you described in this presentation. However, the system is successful because it nourishes competition, and competition means success in the system. So starting from a young age, people in these successful countries are taught to compete between each other, which leads to destruction. So I'm curious, how can we, from a young age, teach a generation? I agree with the person before me making that comment about communication, but I think that systems thinking needs to be a priority in education in kindergartens. And I don't think our generation can change and your generation as much as the next generation.
Right. Let me answer this question first. I can only recommend Tim Jackson, but I can't say that I know everything that exists. So there are many, many authors who maybe are really good, but I don't know them. I know of Tim Jackson. I know of Gaël Giraud. Gaël Giraud is French, but I'm pretty sure some of his books have been translated in English. And maybe you can help her find out.
Yeah, she's in my class, so we can talk about it all day if you want.
Yeah, all right. There are a few very, very important and inspiring economists. Now, there are older works by Robert Costanza and what's his name now? Anyway, but it's old now. It dates back, and it even limits to growth. Limits to growth. It's not just systemics. It's also an economic book. So. Now, to answer the other question, it's difficult because, yes, we would ideally need to teach people systems thinking. But what is systems thinking? Even that, you take two systems thinkers, they disagree with what systems thinking is. So it's going to be complicated from the very start, from the very beginning. But okay, there are a few big lessons to be learned. Some of them I use for my own keynote. The main issue, I would say, is that people do not understand the difference between multidisciplinary / multifaceted or multidimensional thinking and systems thinking. Systems thinking is multidimensional, but multidimensional thinking is not necessarily systemic. There are some specificities. So I would say, and it's another book, I would say read Donella Meadows. There are many other books, but this one is so good. Thinking in Systems. Read Thinking in Systems. Because it has everything you need. So then maybe we would need someone to rework the concept of that book to make sure that it, for different people, different types of people in different ages, maybe a book for kids with that would be a good thing. I don't think that exists. You take the principles of Donella Meadows and you turn them into a book for kids. By the way, if one of you decides to do it, call me. I'm interested. I never had this idea before. I just had it, but I think it's interesting. Anyway, you could then teach people many other things. They need to understand psychology. They need to understand sociology. They need to understand communication. They need to understand one very specific aspect of communication / psychology, because it's a mix. It's threshold psychology. It's not. I can't remember how it's called, but basically, it's how you inspire and catalyze change. So it needs, to me, sursaut. Je sais pas comment dire un sursaut en fait. Yeah, it's not just that. Wake-up call is what I'm saying, but le sursaut, c'est ce que les gens ils font, ils se relèvent. That people need to just wake up and shake and decide, what the hell am I doing? And they need to move and to create that. How to create it? There are very specific tools for that and approaches. But you first have to, and I'm finished after that, to be able to teach people how to do it efficiently. You first have to deconstruct many ideas that exist and that make this impossible. One of these ideas is exactly what I told you before. That scaring people is counterproductive. If you scare people, you paralyze people. This idea is everywhere, and it's wrong. It's not true. It's the opposite of true. And by the way, I want to say that I'm very pissed off. I am very pissed off against some people who are, some of them, well-known and well thought of in their field, and who would not appreciate if someone from outside of their field was to assert some things about what is their field. They would say, hey, you can't talk about it, you're not an expert. And themselves, they allow themselves to say, you can't scare people. That scares them. Well, turns out that there's a whole field of research about it, and you don't know about it, and yet you're talking about it. So you need to deconstruct many, many things first. I don't know how it's possible, and that's the reason why my overall conclusion is that it's going to be difficult to change the world. So we better get going to build the roots of another one, so that when the moment comes and it tips in the right direction. It's my own conclusion. It's very subjective. And to finish, I know that time is up. So to finish, just 1 minute, a small exercise. It's not mine. I didn't invent it. It's Dennis. I saw Dennis Meadows do it. I don't know if it's him who created it. I love it. I hope you liked it. It's an exercise. Put your hands like this, please. Okay. Those of you who know, just play along. Put your hands like this. I'm going to count to 3. And when I'm going to say 3, you're going to clap your hands. Okay? So it's an easy job. Okay? Everybody understood? Yeah? I'm going to say it once more just in case. I'm going to count to 3. And when I say 3, you all clap your hand. Okay? Let's go. 1, 2, 3. So there was one instruction. You had heard it, you had understood it, and yet you failed to put it into play. Why? Why that? Because actions count more than words. So when you go out, talk as much as you want, but please act.